Welcome into Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery. Today on the show, the Falcons were busy at the trade deadline. Dansby finally gets his love as we predicted, and the Hawks will be ready tonight as they head to Madison Square Garden. All next, Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked on Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked on Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Hitting Hard is brought to you by Bet Online. Head to youtube.com, put Locked on Sports Atlanta in the search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Odyssey. Download us for free. Leave us a 5-star review. Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, you can check us out on those platforms now. Then follow me at JMCH316 on Twitter. So the Falcons were busy yesterday, so let's kind of go in order of least important to maybe, I guess, most important. Rashad Fenton, a guy that they traded for, a 7th-round conditional pick, cornerback out of Kansas City. He had been starting, but then they're playing the rookies more, so he kind of found himself out of the mix in Kansas City. He's not very good against the run, not very good in any kind of sort of pass rush situation. His coverage grade by Pro Football Focus, he's a 58.8. So nothing special, but look, here's the reality. You needed some depth, right? That's what you're looking for right now. AJ Terrell's in and out. At least this guy has started in the NFL. Not mad at that pick, 7th-round conditional pick. Who cares? 7th-round pick in the NFL is most likely a guy who's not going to make your team nowadays. So it is what it is, but I like the pickup of getting some more depth at corner. Dean Marlowe traded to the Buffalo Bills for a 7th-round pick. Again, he's the guy that was part of that blown coverage on the DJ Moore touchdown at the end of the game. With all due respect, he's not played very well this year. There's no real ceiling for him on this team. Got no issue, no problem with moving on from him. But obviously the big one is the trade of Calvin Ridley yesterday, which obviously there are conditions that this has. Could be as high as a 5th rounder this year and potentially as high as a 2nd rounder next year. Okay, I'm going to say it like this. I don't really care too much about the compensation. If it works out to be a 6th and a 3rd, a 5th and a 7th, this was going to always happen. And this move is about, look, let's go back in time, okay? I was told, now that we can kind of talk about this more now, we did when the story came out. I was told last fall that the reason Calvin Ridley wasn't going to play is that he had an incident where his home was burglarized when he was on the road, and it freaked him out. And he's got a young kid at home, and the idea of his house being vandalized, burglarized with a young kid around, it freaked him out. And then we got the story here, a few months ago about they rounded up this whole gang of people that were breaking in and robbing, high-end, wealthy folks' homes, right? And Ridley was one of the guys that was targeted. So all the stuff that I had been told ended up, as the news reports came out, ended up coming to fruition. And he was freaked out by the idea of it. Now, look, I understand, as somebody who, my daughter's a teenage daughter now, but as somebody who's had a young daughter, I would always think about those kinds of things. So I get and understand all of that. But you have millions of dollars in the bank. Hire an armed guard, okay? I mean, literally, there are ways that with your wealth and success that you can subvert some of these things that the regular person can't subvert. I get you live in a high-end neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. You got ways to handle all that. What I'm saying is that I don't know that this was an excuse to miss the entire season, to miss everything but, what he played in like 4 or 5 games last year, and then miss the entire rest of the season. Then you double down on the gambling aspect of it, which, again, if you're going to argue about the idea of why was he suspended for the year, then you really don't understand the implications, why guys can't get mixed up in anything gambling related in the sport that they play. I'm not even going to get into all that, but if you don't understand that, then Again, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's probably time to, go inhale some oxygen somewhere and just get outside and get some sunshine and enjoy the day or whatever. Okay. But this was always going to happen. There were rumors last year as we got through the regular season that they were going to move on from Calvin Ridley was never going to play another down for the Atlanta Falcons. They had had enough. They did not see a reason to keep him. He certainly did not have a very difficult contract to move. He was on his 5th-year rookie option, which because of the way they structured everything with the mental health and all that kind of stuff, they were still gonna have his rookie year available contract for $11 million bucks. The suspension helped all that. So again, it is what it is. But I'll give Terry Fontenot credit that they at least got some capital for him, and at least you don't have the distraction anymore about wondering as we head to the offseason, is Ridley going to be back? Will he get reinstated? With all due respect, I could care less about all that stuff now. Now he's Jacksonville problem, okay? And it is disappointing because Calvin Ridley is a really good football player. I mean, he is not a busted or wasted pick by any stretch of the imagination for the production that he gave this team. It just sucks that it's another one of those guys that's not going to see a second contract with this franchise that they had high draft capital in that did perform and not going to see it. That's the part that sucks. But it was time for Ridley to move on, and the Falcons were ready to move on from him. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know if you could trade a player who's not even technically instated in the league right now. Like, technically, he's not part of the NFL right now. He has to be reinstated to be allowed to play next year. We don't know. And we assume that he'll get, after a year suspension, he'll get all that and he'll be fine. But we don't know for sure. But again, that's Jacksonville's problem. So, look, what'd they do for this year? You moved on from a guy who's not very good. You picked up depth at corner. Cool. I didn't figure they were going to do a whole lot more than that. They're going to try to load up for next year. They've got their guys. They're winning with their guys. They're figuring some things out. They're starting to coach and scheme better. They're putting more of their guys in better situations. So I'm okay with not, loading up at the deadline and all that. That just doesn't really happen in the NFL. We weren't going to be in the Roquan Smith business, and we weren't going to be in the Bradley Chubb business. That's just not the route that they were going to go. They were not going to give up high capital. They were not going to eat up all their cap space and everything like that. They weren't just going to do those things this year. So I'm fine with what the Falcons did. But moving on from Ridley, I think right now is a stroke of genius in a lot of ways. Now you take that whole could he or could he not, or will he or will he not, you take all of that off the table now. And, again, if he gets an extension from Jacksonville, they could go as high as a second-round pick. There's conditions about how much he plays. Again, I don't care all that much about what the final compensation package is. If it turns out to be, let's just even say a 6th and a 4th, fine. It is what it is. You had to move on from the guy. You had to go and the longer this thing lingered, trying to wait until you're not going to get fair and equitable value for a guy who's on suspension for gambling right now, who's got that strike against him after missing most of a season with the, mental health. And I'm not trying to take away from the situation that happened. I understand that that's a traumatic situation, but he was also in a position where he had the resources to be able to go out and do some things that you and I just can't do. And the idea of missing the entirety of the rest of the year, and then you put gambling on top of that while you're off, you get mixed up and all that. Bad looks all the way around for Calvin Ridley. So I thought the Falcons did a great job at the deadline. They helped a little bit for this year, and they've moved on from the idea of questions that we have to answer for next year. I want to talk about my friends over at BetOnline. Listen, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your sports wagering information. Are you following the Georgia-Tennessee line? Thing has been all over the place. I saw one that has it down to 8. It was 8.5 yesterday, down to 8. It's starting to move and fluctuate. How you feeling about that? Go over to betonline.net today. It's very simple. You take that mobile device, right? Everybody's got their phone. Everybody's got their device that they use now. Head to betonline.net. Check out all of the action over there. You want to get involved in college football, NFL, World Series, NBA basketball. We're not very far away from college basketball starting up. Everything is available at betonline.net. You need news and information. You need podcast info. You need stats. You need scores. Everything you need to make you a smarter, better is available at betonline.net. So take the mobile device today, head over to betonline.net, get in on the action, check out all of the different news and information that they have available to you, all very easily in the palm of your hand. BetOnline.net is where the action starts. So let's give some congratulations. As yesterday, we got word that Max Fried, who won, I believe, his third Gold Glove yesterday, and of course, the guy that we told you months ago, Dansby Swanson, won his first Gold Glove. Now, Dansby got robbed in 2020. If you go look during the pandemic year, the 60-game pandemic season, he got robbed of the Gold Glove. If you look at all the metrics and everything, defensive wars and errors and range factors and everything you want to use for baseball analytics and metrics about defense and all that stuff, Dansby got robbed in 2020. He should have been the Gold Glove winner that season. And I think, and I may be wrong, you can correct me, but I think it was Javi Baez that ended up winning the Gold Glove that year, I think for the Cubs. But Dansby was robbed in 2020. So I really thought, even in the early part of the year, and we predicted this on the show and talked about it, that Dansby was going to win the Gold Glove this year. He played outstanding defense. And I think toward the end of the year, a few of those plays that he made late in some of those series just kind of solidified the idea of it. So look, you know what that means? You know what adding a Gold Glove to your resume in your free agent season means? Cha-ching. You add more money to all of it, right? Adding more money to what Dansby Swanson's contract is going to be. And look, this is going to come to a head pretty quickly here, right? We just had game 3 of the World Series last night. So we're not, the World Series, assuming it doesn't rain out 3 or 4 more times, this will be over in a week. And then we'll be getting ready for baseball's offseason. Believe it or not, as you look at the calendar, we're in November. We're not very far away from when we get into winter meetings and all that good kind of stuff. So this is going to come down quickly. And this is just another notch for Dansby to add into his, hey, this is what my value is. He's now a 25-homer Gold Glove shortstop, nearly 100 RBI, nearly 100 runs scored. I mean, again, 99 runs scored shortstop. There ain't many of those guys running around Major League Baseball. There ain't a whole list of those guys that are out there. And I get everybody wants, because you see Michael Harris or you see Strider, they don't sign these contracts, and Ozzie and everybody like that. This Braves payroll situation is going to be fascinating because, look, I've said before, I do think they will find a way that Dansby will be here. I think they're going to have him somewhere in that maybe like $20 to $24 million per season range. I don't think it'll get over maybe about 23, 24 million average per year, but I think 20 is your starting number. And I get he wants to be here, and I get he's the hometown kid, and I get that, he's one of their cornerstones and all that stuff, but I don't get the sense Dansby wants to play for free. All of the things that happened this year, right? The run production, the RBI, the home run, stealing a career high in bases, and now you add a Gold Glove on top of all of that. It's get paid time for him. And, he's played through the rookie contract. He's played through the arbitration years and all that stuff. Remember, this year was an arbitration year for Dansby. I want to say $10.5 or $11 million is what his arbitration number was. So he's navigated through all of those waters. This is not about buying out his last couple of arbitration years and, like they did with Riley, buy out in the last couple of years and then give him a really nice deal. This is about, hey, brother, I'm about to hit the open market and I can go cash in for all of this. But again, I'll say that I think he's going to stay with the Atlanta Braves. I think when all is said and done, that unlike the Freddie situation, remember, they have the same agent. But again, Freddie may have fired his agent by now and all that stuff, but Dansby went in with the same agent that Freddie Freeman has. I don't think that there's any ill will if you listen to what Alex Anthopoulos has said about this situation. But if they lose Dansby, do they go ahead and lock up Max Fried? Because whatever the Dansby situation is, the next guy that they have to start having those conversations about is Max Fried. You know, the guy who's the best left-hander in baseball, you know, the ace of this staff, and a guy that's coming into his prime years, and a guy that does nothing but win for this organization. Yeah, I know he stunk it up in the Philadelphia series. I got news for you. Everybody stunk it up in the Philadelphia series. He was one of 12 guys that stunk it up in the Philadelphia series. So just put him in a long list of those guys out there. But he's the next guy that's about to get that massive buyout. And he's got, I think, 2 years of arbitration. He's got 2 years left. So if he goes arbitration this year, he got a nice bump in arbitration. He'll get another nice bump. But he's the next guy. And I wouldn't be surprised that if they lose Dansby, if they end up losing Dansby, if Max Fried isn't the next guy that they go ahead and lock up to. Because really at this point, you know, there isn't a whole lot left of your core that you got to worry too much about, right? I don't think you really have to do anything with Contreras right now. Darno's got 1 more year. Expect him to be back next year. And I've said, I think after next year, they will flip Darno and Contreras, where Contreras will take over as the starting catcher. Darno will be the backup, and they'll keep him around here because they like all the intangibles and everything that Travis. And look, nothing bad about Travis Darno. I hope he stays around until he's done playing. You know, Travis Darno feels like one of those guys who could be a manager at some point, right? So I think that flips in the next year or so. And you've got most of your staff that's locked up, right? I mean, I don't think they're too worried about Kyle Wright right now, but Strider signed another year of Morton and things like that. So if they don't keep Dansby around, I expect then they will break off some money because, again, Max Fried's going to be another one of those guys that he ain't coming for free. You're the best left-hander in baseball. You're a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. You're going to go out and get every dollar that you possibly can. So good for both of those guys. They both deserve it. Max Fried is an outstanding, you know, it's too bad we don't get to see Max Fried hit anymore. Would love to see that. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of DH. I'm an old school guy. I like the idea of the pitcher hitting, even if it is a free out. But again, Max Fried wasn't a free out. But for a guy in Dansby who got robbed a couple of years ago of his Gold Glove opportunity, and 2020 was the egregious year. He should have been the Gold Glove winner that year. And I know the 60-game pandemic and all that, but it had nothing to do with how good Dansby was defensively that year. So I was glad to see that Dansby got his due. And brother, you could not have scripted, if you're a major league player, a better way to have your walk year in free agency go for all of this. You could not have come up with a better way with the power, the steals, the average, the defense, the runs scored, everything. This feels like the ultimate Jeff Blauser situation. Remember when Jeff Blauser had his career year? I think Dansby's a better player, but I'm just saying, remember, Jeff Blauser in his walk year had like the ultimate career year for the Atlanta Braves. I'll give Dansby credit, man. He finally got his due defensively. And one thing about the Gold Glove is once this starts, you usually start to roll off several of these. All right, we'll remind you that as you're listening to Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery and making it your first listen, your next listen should be Locked On Sports Today. Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on our Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast from. Check out Locked On Sports Today as part of the Locked On Network. So tonight in Gotham, the Atlanta Hawks are up in New York to take on the Knickerbockers in the world's most famous arena. And, you know, last year we talked a lot about the idea of, you know, this team was talking about the regular season and this, that, and the other. We also brought up here not very long ago, if you remember, the Atlanta Hawks started off 1-8 on the road, which included that 4-game losing streak out west, the Utah, Denver, and all that stuff. They started out 1-8. So they've at least won 2 games on this road trip. Now, look, the Hawks got blown out the other night. I don't really put much stock in that. They haven't played well in Toronto. And as my friend Sam Mitchell, the former NBA coach of the year, said, you're going to have 6 or 8 nights a year where it doesn't matter what you do. It's just not going to come together. And the Hawks were in that game for at least the first half going into the third quarter. And then it got away from them. So I don't put too much stock and emphasis about that. Do they have all these problems or issues or this, that, and the other? I promise they will be laser focused tonight because these are the kinds of matchups that Trae Young and the Hawks live for. And while Trae Young has had some up and down games, he had 10 turnovers the other night, right? I expect we're going to see a laser focused Trae Young tonight in this game. I expect them to give their best, arguably best performance of the year tonight because they know this is a chance to have a winning record on the road, which is certainly a much better start than they had last year. B, they're about to head back home, right? So this is the final night. Let's get a victory, and then we get to get back home, and we're going to go back and sleep on our own bed. And 3, most importantly, is this is the Hawks' son. This is the team that they ramp up, and the New York crowd is going to be eager and excited. Like we're very early in the season. You know that they're going to be pumped up and ready to go for this game. And this features a couple of teams that, the Knicks are one of the best scoring teams in the NBA. They're also one of the worst defensive scoring teams in the NBA. The Hawks are, they're 13th in the NBA in scoring, and they're like 16th or 17th in points given up. So I'll be honest with you, I don't expect a whole ton of defense in this game tonight. I expect this to be an up and down, back and forth type of game, and I expect a lot of folks to get involved. Look, is Trae going to have 10 turnovers? I don't expect that at all. I think this is where you get laser-focused Trae. Now, one thing about the Hawks is they're one of the better shooting teams in the NBA. The Knicks are one of the worst field goal percentage given up teams in the league. So if there was a night for the Hawks to get their offense healthy and get some things rolling, to get Trae cranked up and going, and let's face it, John Collins the last couple of nights, or last couple of games, I should say, from the three-point line has been dreadful. Okay. Maybe it's, I don't want to say it's getting to be like Josh Smith like here of late for John Collins, but maybe it's time to pull back from shooting so many threes. Stay on the inside. Let Murray and Trae Young feed you on the inside. He's got a really good field goal percentage. Let those guys feed you on the inside. Play down low. You and Capella stay down there. Don't worry about stepping out for three. Let Hunter and Trae and Murray and those guys, let those guys, be out there. And there'll be no Bogey again tonight, so we're still waiting to see when he comes back. But, it's hard to evaluate the Hawks right now because when you get like a 5-game road swing this early in the NBA season, it's tough to tell what this team is. And look, played very well against Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee's the best team in the Eastern Conference. Hell, they might be the best team in the NBA, but I think they're the best team in the Eastern Conference. And I think they had Chris Middleton healthy. They might have found themselves into the NBA Finals again last year. So no shame in going up there and fighting hard and losing that game. The Toronto game is, again, it's one of those nights in the NBA. Guess what? There'll be some other 30-point losses that the Hawks manage to find. That's just the nature of the league. You're not going to play great 32 nights a year, and there are going to be some nights where you fight for a while and it doesn't go your way, and then the game just gets off the rails. So I'm not concerned about all of that. But this game tonight in New York, I am going to be very eager to see how the Hawks respond because they got blown out. They got crushed the other night, 139, 109. Did not play good defense, especially late in that game, but didn't really play great defense overall. Their defense has been very like this so far this season. Offensively, they've been pretty good, but not where we thought. And the Knicks are a high-volume scoring team. By the way, everybody's favorite former Hawk, Cam Reddish, is listed as questionable tonight. Remember when he had that game to start the year where he scored 22 and did all this stuff, and he actually didn't even plus out? He actually was a -1 in the plus-minus department with that big game. Yeah, he hasn't scored double digits in a game since then. But anyway, that's fine. We don't have to go back in time and talk about, how right I was about all of that. But anyway, he's questionable for tonight. We'll see if he plays. Maybe if he does, he's got some motivation. But I expect a really good effort tonight from this Hawks team because this is one of those regular season games that you get yourself ramped up and amped up for, right? And again, as we mentioned, things that are falling in place, getting back home, wrapping up a road trip, a chance to get above 500 on the road. If they can win tonight, you're 3-2. That's a really good start. I'll take 3-2. But I expect Trae and this group to get it cranked up and going. And look, this is where tonight you need Collins to get himself back on track. You need a get right game. This is not a great defensive team. They give up a high percentage of shooting the basketball. So tell me John Collins gets back to being 18 and 11 tonight. Tell me DeAndre Hunter goes for 18 to 20 tonight. I expect Trae, in all honesty, think he's going to be in the 30s tonight. I think you'll see Trae, and Trae's averaging 29 a game. By the way, as far as the Murray Trae deal, 49 points per game, almost 10 rebounds combined, and over 17 assists. So those guys are giving you 49 and 17 every night. Not sure how much more you could have asked for from those two guys and getting it stepped up. But if you're looking for a game, we mentioned Bet Online, earlier in the game. I don't know what the spread is or the line is in this thing. I don't know if the Hawks are favored, they're an underdog. But I really do believe tonight that we are going to see what will be the best regular season night so far for the Atlanta Hawks. And again, only 7 games in, I get all of that. And you've played Detroit and Houston and, Orlando, and you played some slugs. So I think they'll shake off the loss from the other night. But if there was a night where I would probably bet on the Hawks, like I said, I don't know if they're a favorite, underdog, whatever like that, but going to Madison Square Garden, that they get amped up and ramped up in that environment. I expect Trae Young to have one of those 33 and 11 kinds of nights tonight. I think Collins is an 18 and 11 kind of night. Murray will be about 20 and 9 tonight. But this will be a fun night in Madison Square Garden as this team ramps it up and they end this road trip and get back home. Expect a big night from the Hawks in Madison Square Garden. Always a fun matchup in the NBA. All right, well, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Again, reminder, make Locked On Sports Today in their podcast your second listen every day. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. They are free and available on their YouTube page and Odyssey and wherever you get your podcast from. And again, head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta in your search browser, hit the subscribe button, be a part of our ever-growing community. We head toward 5,000 subscribers. We thank you greatly for being a part of that community. We are also free and available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Odyssey. Check us out there. Roku and Amazon Fire. Hit us up on those platforms as well. And then follow me at JMCH316 on Twitter. Back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.